think about where FreeWheel was in 2007, which seems like a long time ago, and I think in our world is a lifetime. In 2007, we had a pretty difficult challenge, which was how do we enable dynamic ad insertion for premium video publishers across every screen that existed back then? And back then, you were talking about desktop, some mobile phones, maybe an Xbox, a PlayStation, right? But we wanted to do that across an ecosystem of partners, of different player companies, of content management systems, and we wanted to just make it work seamlessly for a publisher. Back then, that was a challenge of its own, and it's something that over the past 7, 8 years, we've really built a business around. Today, that challenge still exists, and it's something that we're doing for all of our clients, but now I think the nature of the problem has expanded a lot. So when all those screens we were talking about were IP enabled, right? Now we have new screens to think about. We have to start thinking about set-top box VOD. We have to start thinking about the linear television, so really getting back into the living room. So a lot of our remit now is about unification across all these evolving screens and bringing ads to viewers across all these screens. I think the second thing that we see now is this is going to be a world where many, many different currencies exist. So it's not going to be just Nielsen, it's not going to be just ComScore, it's not going to be just your first-party data, your third-party data, your viewability data. It's going to be all of them. And there's this world evolving where we have to help our clients transact and track all these different data sets. And then lastly, programmatic. With our Forefront solution, we've seen a lot of traction in this space, but we see a lot more need for FreeWheel to help push TV compliance standards and sort of drive safe programmatic for TV publishers. So these are the things that we're working on today. When we talk about HyLDA, we're really focused on that unification of screens that we just talked about. And this is our first step, and I would say a really huge inflection point for the company. And what it means is simply that we're going to bring together the worlds of dynamic ad insertion and digital with the world of linear TV scheduling to enable our publishers to manage their TV content.
So not to get too deep in the weeds around ad ops, but it's been my understanding that dynamic ad insertion for linear is difficult in terms of the legacy systems that are in place versus digital. So how does that work, or what's the roadmap? How will that roll out?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I would even add to that, it's the systems, but it's also just the org structures. If you think about the way a lot of TV publishers or programmers are structured, you have a different set of ops and sales, even salespeople for linear and digital. It's also the same thing on the agency and buyer side for the most part. So the ecosystem isn't actually really built for this sort of unified problem. So for FreeWheel, we've really focused from a product standpoint first on the digital use case, because that's our home, that's where we've built our business. So imagine that you're a TV sports programmer and you have an iPad app and you have an Xbox and a Roku app where viewers are engaging with sports content online, right? That is very similar to the linear environment in that you might have 1 million, 2 million concurrent users that are all watching a game at the same time. That is linear. That's linear television, but it's just done over IP. It's done over a different set of protocols. So for us, when we thought about HyLDA, we were saying, well, how can we help those publishers in digital first put a Geico ad at 8:13 and then put a Home Depot ad at 8:14? Begin to build that type of scheduling functionality into the system. So now you have more predictable user experience. The users are seeing ads. They're not seeing blank slates if there are no ads to play. They're able to spread ads over the course of a game, for example. So Coke goes in the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, the fourth quarter, very similar to the way you would do it in TV, but the hybrid word in HyLDA is also allowing dynamic ad insertion to happen. So let's say you're now in a break, you've played forward you've scheduled forward in the first position, you can actually throw it back up to the ad server and pull in another ad, right, that maybe has a higher CPM or needs more delivery. But our ad server is still going to understand competitive separation. So it's still going to say, you know what? We put forward in that first position, don't bring in Toyota. And that's a super important thing for this industry, is maintaining those TV compliance standards, and that's a big part of what HyLDA is doing. It's bringing that predictability together with the yield benefits of dynamic ad insertion.
And just to sort of follow up, so dynamic ad insertion in linear, is that sort of a dream that you guys have? Is it going to develop here in other markets? Where might that happen or when?
Yeah, I think the when is a good question. I don't think it's a matter of if it's going to happen. I would say, I think back to the technical challenge. If you think about cable systems that are closed infrastructure, it's not the open internet, so you can't do a lot of the things that we talk about in digital today. That said, a lot of the systems are being overbuilt on IP protocol on digital, just the way a computer works today. So longer term, I think a lot of the systems are going to be enabled for this. If you go to Europe or if you go to South America even, a lot of the cable systems are IP enabled, which means that you could theoretically do a lot of this already. For us, everything that we're talking about today with HyLDA lays the foundation for all of that. So the huge step for us is being able to even speak the language of a TV grid, to be able to speak in terms of minutes and hours and breaks, as opposed to video views and ad views and completion and the digital metrics that we're all used to. Now we need to be able to also think about the things that people think about on TV, a 24/7 TV grid.
As you guys roll this out, how do you see it sort of rolling out in terms of the kinds of clients or publishers, domestically, internationally? I don't know if you can name any, but tell us kind of what the industry rollout looks like.
Sure. Definitely can't name anyone right now, but I think it's instructive to look at our video monetization report. So if you're a reader of the report, for our programmer set, about 25% of their volume is now coming from live, which is a big number, and live has consistently been the huge growth story for FreeWheel. And then if you take that down a step further and look at who's driving that growth, it's not surprising. It's 80% of that volume is coming from sports programmers. And sports has always been sort of the seeding mechanism for live and digital, and it makes sense. If you're not near your TV and you need to watch a game, you're going to pull up your phone and open the app for whatever channel it's on. A lot of the Roku's and Xboxes of the world also offer just a better viewer experience. They offer more access to content. So sports just made sense for live and digital. So when we developed HyLDA, we had the sports programmers first in mind, because they are the ones that right now are already seeing this volume in very significant scale. So our initial rollout is really focused on sports. And you can think of it as, in the playoffs, managing the ad schedule for a playoff game in digital. But we've also been talking a lot to even news broadcasters, because that is another area where we've seen a lot more growth in live streaming. A lot of people, again, not near the TV, if they need to watch breaking news, they are tuning in to their app. So we're seeing more volume there. On the entertainment side, there's more. I think there's more opportunity there, but it's really a matter of when a lot of the TV Everywhere apps really get to scale and people really are watching linear television on an iPad app. Right now, I think a lot of that iPad viewing is still on demand for entertainment content, so it hasn't been our focus, but we see it coming, and that's why. But sports to us is the immediate use case.